Now let's move on from that and we can talk about pen names, because this is something that has come up in terms of J.K. Rowling, because she does write her books under a pen name basically. So J.K. Rowling's real name is Joanne Rowling, and she published Harry Potter under the name J.K. Rowling, which stands for Joanne Kathleen. So I really like that this J.K. Rowling name is a gender neutral name. You have no idea what J.K. stands for when you're looking at it, so it's very easy to assume that the author is a male. And that was the intention of coming up with this gender neutral name, because they didn't think that a book like this would sell to little boys if they thought that a woman was writing the book. And I thought that that was very ironic, considering that the whole book is mainly about Harry Potter, who is a boy, so boys should be drawn to this book just because the male character is a boy. And on its face, I think that this could just be like a simple explanation, but it also is very disheartening to know that as a woman, you have to publish your work that is amazingly good and has really transformed a whole entire generation of readers, that you have to publish your work under a gender neutral or a male name in order to get the recognition and respect that you deserve. I do think that this is problematic, and it really speaks to gender-based prejudice in our community and in our world, that a woman should have to do something like this. And so this also leads you into the idea and the concept of why she's fighting so hard for women and women-only spaces, because she had to kind of hide or deny her identity as a woman in order for Harry Potter to be as successful as it is. But I also really like the fact that I think from the first book that I read, I knew that J.K. Rowling was a woman. I don't know how soon she came out and said, hey, you know, it's actually me, I wrote the book, I'm a woman, and all of that stuff, right? So I've always known that she was a woman and all of that stuff, but I don't know how long it took for her to have to come out and like clarify, because especially once the book started taking off and all of that, and she's getting all of this recognition and people are going to want to meet with the author and speak with the author, so it didn't seem like she had to like hide for too long. She was able to instantly, I feel like, come out and say, hey, you know, a woman wrote this book, and she's not claiming to be a man, she's not telling you to treat her like a man or anything like that. And once her identity was out, she said, okay, hey, I'm a woman, I wrote this, give me my kudos, right? And so I feel like that's very different, because a lot of people are trying to say, hey, you know, she's writing under a male pen name, she's writing under a male name, she's digitally trans. I don't think that that's the case, because that happens for a completely different reason. Pen names are not necessarily connected to the trans movement. People write under pen names when they want to distance themselves from the work that they create, or they want to see how well their work will be received if their name wasn't attached to it. So like, you can have certain famous people who release a project and people go crazy for it, not because they care about the project, but because of a name that is associated with it. And so that is kind of like the more traditional understanding of what pen names mean. So the fact that she is using a pen name speaks volumes, and it also speaks about the kind of role that women have in society, because this was in the late 90s that she wrote Harry Potter, and if she's having to use a gender neutral or a male pen name in the late 90s, that tells you that women are not really on equal footing when it comes to how men are perceived and how women are perceived. And if we're being honest, just to explain the J.K. Rowling pen name again, I really like that J.K. stands for Joanne Kathleen. It's two very feminine names. It's not like it's James Kevin or something like that. So if you look deeper, you can clearly see evidence that a woman wrote this book, and she's not really trying to hide her identity as a woman. She's probably claiming it, and it's just that she had to go this route in order to get the recognition that she deserved, which is kind of sad if you really think about it. Now, her other name, Robert Galbraith, is a little bit different, because this is a very obvious male pen name, and she came up with this pen name because she wanted to differentiate herself from the Harry Potter writing. So I can understand wanting to see, hey, you know, if I create more books, are people going to read this book because it's me writing it, or are they going to read these books because they're really into the story that I'm telling in this new series that I'm creating? So I can totally understand her wanting to do that. There's also the controversy with her pen name being the name of a psychiatrist or psychologist in America who I guess was into conversion therapy. And so when you think about it and you look back and you look at the sign, you can kind of see, I guess, a little bit of red flags that kind of point to this moment that we're at, where she is really fighting the trans movement and advocating for women's rights. Now, I don't know if that was intentional, but that is something that people are pointing to when they're looking at her pen names. Now, in terms of whether or not she's digitally trans and using these gender neutral and male pen names, I don't think that's the case at all. I think there's something completely different about pretending to be a man for the perceived benefits because those benefits are denied to you because you're a woman versus completely rejecting being a woman to claim that you are a man and only identify as a man going forward. That's obviously not what J.K. Rowling is doing. She has come out and made it very clear that she is a woman, and so she is not rejecting being a woman so that she can be known and acknowledged and treated as a man going forward. So for me, being trans is about rejecting one gender for the other. It's about rejecting your biological sex in favor of the opposite sex that you were not born. And I want to point to some modern analogies of this. So you can think of this as when Black people who have Black sounding names, they may use slightly different names when they are applying for jobs. It may be easier to pronounce or they don't want to be discriminated against if you can clearly tell that that is a name of someone who is Black. And so there are these things that certain people have to do in order to get ahead in life or to be perceived a certain way in life based on their name, based on the way they look and all of that stuff. And so I think sadly this is very common, what J.K. Rowling had to do as far as changing her name or making it more gender neutral to be taken seriously and to have her work read, because I don't know what the reaction would have been if she used Joanne Rowling. Obviously that doesn't sound as cool as J.K. Rowling, so there's that. And then also, would people have been willing to read this book? Would this just be kind of like a book for girls if we clearly knew that the author was a woman? And so in that sense, it's really sad to think about, because if it was very clear from the onset that a woman wrote this book, would Harry Potter not have gotten as big as it has? Because Harry Potter is everywhere. There's theme parks, there's movies, there's books, there's a TV show coming. And so I can't imagine all of that being limited or squashed just because a woman wrote the series. And so that is really crazy to me. And so I'm glad that Harry Potter has gotten as big as it has, because J.K. Rowling really deserved all of the money, all of the recognition, all of the praise that she's getting, because Harry Potter, in my opinion, is truly the best work of my generation. This is a book that anyone can read. This is literally a children's book. It's not overly politicized. There's no really controversial things in Harry Potter. It really is a simple story of good versus evil. Everyone hates Lord Voldemort, everyone hates the Death Eaters and all of that stuff, right? And there's everyday kind of like lessons that you can read and observe in Harry Potter. And so I really like that this truly is a book for everyone, and it's not something that's meant to be super divisive. Now, I know that when Harry Potter first came out, it was probably controversial in the religious communities just because it deals with spells and magic, which for obvious reasons people were against. But aside from that, Harry Potter truly is work that anyone can read, and it is for everyone. Now, the other example that I want to give to give a modern analogy, so there are Black people who can pass. So if you are a Black person who can pass, that means that you basically look like a white person. There are some Black people who have passed, but they go back and forth between being white, identifying as white, and identifying as Black, depending on what their perceived benefits are. So if you're talking about Jim Crow, they might have passed and identified as white so that they could go into certain spaces that Blacks were not allowed. And then they may identify as Black when they're in their normal communities. There are other people who are Black and could pass, who rejected their Black identity and going forward only identified as white. They completely abandoned their Black community and their Black identity. So if we connect this back to J.K. Rowling, she's not doing the second option. She's not completely rejecting her identity as a woman in order to benefit as a male author in the real world. She is just using those temporary benefits of having people not instantly connect this work with the work of a woman so that her book and her story can be told. And so I think it's super important to acknowledge that just because she uses a male pen name or a gender neutral pen name, that doesn't mean that she's rejecting what it means to be a woman. She's just playing the game. She's playing the system to get ahead because she understands that there are disadvantages of what it means to be a woman in modern society.